It's time for The Drive with Q on Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game. Now, here's Q.
Good afternoon, everyone. 5 o'clock straight up on the East Coast.
time
It
for
is
The Drive with
indeed
Q on Sports Radio.
a fantastic What the Frig Friday edition of The Drive with Q. I'm telling you right now, there's so much stuff going on right now in the NFL world. I'm telling you, at this moment, I don't even know where to begin. We got 60 to play with on this 31st of January 2025. As always, inside the friendly confines of the Sports Radio 1029 FM The Game studios. I'm your host, Rich Quinones. Angel Martinez handling Pro Bowl duties for the network in Orlando and hopefully enjoying himself, and rightfully so, as he should. 727-858-6650. I had about 16 windows open prior to. We've been just doing so much behind the scenes. We're going to be onboarding some new programming, so definitely keep it locked in as always to SR 1029 FM The Game. We got through that first week of the Super Bowl hype with the Super Bowl right around the corner. Super Bowl 59, Kansas City, the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll go NFL heavy. We got to get into the Tucker situation, Cam Newton's comments regarding Jalen Hurts, which are just absolutely not even foolish. I mean, do we call them foolish? I don't even think I would call them foolish. I would call them asinine. And we might be on the cusp of a big time gambling scandal in the NBA. Terry Rozier. And I'll tell you right now, there are reports, there's buzz coming out that he ain't the only cat in town that's involved in this, but we will dissect it. I want to start with a little NFL. Obviously, we are, you get through this first week, Super Bowl week, and then everyone's trying to figure out the storylines, and there are so many storylines, and, referendum on Jalen Hurts, the legacy Patrick Mahomes, and Saquon's legs and his guts carry the Philadelphia Eagles to a championship. Where you at with Nick Sirianni? Andy Reid, is he going to call it a day if they win again? Back to back to back. So many storylines. And I remember there was also a time where there wasn't this 2-week lull in the Super Bowl. It wasn't always like this. So you can come up with a ridiculous amount of storylines all you want. The bottom line is this. Sunday, February 9th, it's going to be decided in the Superdome. And right now, Kansas City's still sitting with that line as a favorite, 1.5. The total is 48.5. And I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think it's going to be a fun game. I can definitely see this game being a who has the ball last kind of scenario, if you want to play it like that. Is it going to be a high-scoring game? Yeah, I do. I think these offenses are going to open up a little bit, and we might see a little trickery. We might see a bunch of big-time plays. We might see game-breaking plays, because that's what we're accustomed to with these two teams. That's what we're accustomed to. Both these teams can put up a lot of points. And both these teams, if they need to make a defensive stop, they can make a defensive stop. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you on the surface at this moment that, this is going to be a referendum on Jalen Hurts. Now, I mentioned this the other day, and it kind of leads me into this. Jalen Hurts, wherever you want to position him as far as top 15, top 20, top 10, hey, man, have at it. That's your opinion, and I don't have a problem with it. And it's interesting because Cam Newton, who, let's be honest, Cam Newton had one big moment in the NFL when he won the MVP. I mean, Cam Newton's not a Hall of Fame quarterback. Cam Newton's sitting there saying, well, if Eli gets in, then you better give me a gold jacket. What the hell are you talking about? I mean, Cam Newton basically decided on the biggest stage on a fumble to not try to go for the ball in the Super Bowl. That's Cam Newton. And his comments about Jalen Hurts are just utterly ridiculous. And I just don't know. Is the hate palpable when it comes to Jalen Hurts? I mean, do we, to sit there and suggest that if you stuck Jalen Hurts in another conference, he wouldn't be as good? It just does not make sense. I mean, they've dominated throughout the season. Oh, by the way, they beat some pretty damn good teams. Some really good teams. And you got to have Newton sit there and say, I've been all types of different name calling because of my game-changing game manager viewpoint. All of the game changers are in the AFC. If you put the Philadelphia Eagles or Jalen Hurts in the AFC, would have been able to have gotten to the Super Bowl as many times. When you see Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, that's must-see TV. When you see Patrick Mahomes versus Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or even Joe Burrow, that's must-see TV, right? Well, let me ask a question to Cam Newton, which we already kind of know the answer to. Did the Eagles not beat those teams? Did they not beat Cincinnati? Did they not beat the Ravens? Did they not beat the Steelers? Am I missing something? The last time I checked, they put up 37 against Cincinnati. They beat them by 20. The last time I checked, they held the Ravens to 19 points. The last time I checked, they beat the Steelers by 14. So what the hell is Cam Newton talking about? It makes no sense. I get it. Everybody wants to just basically, they want to come out of the woodwork and they basically want to just piss all over the Philadelphia Eagles, piss all over Jalen Hurts. Listen, I get it. You got an obnoxious fan base. You got an obnoxious team. As a Giant fan, it pains me to see that this team is a week away win from going to the Super Bowl and winning another one, right? I mean, it's not even the jealousy factor. It's just like, I can't take it. I don't want to have to deal with it. But can also sit here and accept the fact that they're a hell of a team. They're a pretty good team. So for people, again, to suggest that Jalen Hurts is not a good quarterback, or if you stuck the Philadelphia Eagles in another conference, it makes no sense. It just makes absolutely no sense. They're a very good team. They're a really good team. There's a reason that the Philadelphia Eagles have an opportunity to play for the Lombardi Trophy. There's a reason the Philadelphia Eagles year in and year out are making deep runs in the playoffs. There's a reason that the Philadelphia Eagles are arguably one of the best teams in the NFC East over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. You're going to have a lull. You're going to have a down year, but more times than not, they're right there. So to suggest anything otherwise is absolutely foolish. And like I said, Cam Newton, cup of coffee, a couple moments in the NFL. Cam Newton's not a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's not. Cam Newton went to one Super Bowl. Just going to be Jalen Hurts' second Super Bowl. Oh, by the way. Then he says he want to trade his MVP for a Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? What are we doing here? I mean, I don't get it. An MVP award, that's a solo award, man. That's an individual award. You got an opportunity to cement yourself legacy in the NFL, winning a Super Bowl, having an opportunity, right? And again, he's looking at the Brad Johnson, the Trent Dilfers, and the Nick Foles. I mean, listen, you're judged on Super Bowls. You're not judged on individual awards. And that's where it gets lost in the sauce for a guy like Cam Newton. And as I alluded to, all those years of running around and taking those hits and bouncing around, and then we kind of saw he was never the same player. Jalen Hurts is going to have a longer career than Cam Newton. I mean, he just is. I mean, like I said, Cam Newton had some nice moments in the NFL. Don't get me wrong. Cam Newton had some nice moments in the NFL. But if you go back, out of all these years as a starter, his best season was the 15-1 when he won the MVP, and rightfully so. Rightfully so, but he's not a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's just not. This guy was 6 games over 500. What the hell did he do in the playoffs? I mean, you're 3-4. Jalen Hurts going to a second Super Bowl? I mean, the jealousy is real. You get these former quarterbacks, you get some of these former players to come on as soon as we inch closer and closer to the Super Bowl. And a lot of times they're going to be very opinionated. A lot of times they are going to try to tap dance on another team or a player. And, sometimes you got to take it for what it's worth, right? So you got that stuff going on. You got the Justin Tucker, which I'll tell you, man, we had the whole situation with Deshaun Watson and these massage parlors, right? And these issues with the masseuses, and, Tucker's coming out and he's going to social media and he's having his comment, his thoughts, his release, if you will, press release. the Ravens are saying what they need to say. I mean, what's coming out is not flattering. It really isn't. It's really disturbing. And the NFL has to, again, do right here. Do right. I mean, you have to look into these allegations by these massage therapists. You have to. I mean, again, there's got to be a level of respect here. And I get it. He's going to come out and he is basically going to dismiss these allegations. But if you keep reading through the fine print, the inappropriate touching towards massage therapists, 4 spas and wellness centers in the Baltimore area over a 4-year stretch. I mean, this is some pretty nasty stuff. We grilled Deshaun Watson. Did we not? We absolutely grilled Deshaun Watson for this kind of stuff. I said he should never play in the NFL again. And then, you're settling and you had 20, 30, 40, all these women coming out. It's a bad look right now for Tucker and the NFL and the Baltimore Ravens. Absolutely. It's a very bad look. And then the other story on a more of a, not a lighter note, but this whole Jacksonville Jags and Tampa Bay Bucks. It's becoming like a little bit of a rivalry here, right? I mean, this Liam Cohen situation is not going away. The Bucks blocked another offensive staff member from joining their former coordinator, who's now the head coach of Jacksonville, his staff. I guess they're still a little pissed, or a lot pissed, or upset. I mean, that story is not going away. I mean, here's a guy that was going to be the highest paid coordinator in the NFL. He secretly met with Jacksonville, took their head coaching job, tried to bring his staff over, and Bucks are like, hell no, not happening. No favors. I mean, you almost feel bad for the guy because Cohen's ruining it for potential, candidates down the line. But hey, that's well within Tampa Bay's right. Well within the right. And then you got the story with Kellen Moore. And now how everyone, the distractions, Super Bowl week, the Philadelphia Eagles, here you go. You're courting Kellen Moore, offensive coordinator. Is he going to take the job? Is he planning to take the job? What's going to go on? Is it going to be a mental lapse? Do the Eagles have to worry about this, that, the other thing? Listen, 6:30, 6:07, whenever the official kickoff is come next Sunday, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're not going to be thinking about that. The players are not playing the game thinking, I wonder if our OC is going to take a job and be the next head coach of, say, the New Orleans Saints. They're not even dealing with that nonsense, nor should they. You're going to be so locked in. You're not even thinking about that. 727-858-6650. All right, we're just cranking up on a What the Frig Football Friday edition of The Drive with Q, coming at you live inside the friendly confines of the Sports Radio 102.9 FM, The Game Studios, Southwest Florida's newest game in town. We'll take a quick time out, a lot more NFL. I definitely want to get into this Terry Rozier story, the NBA. It's absolutely fascinating, and yet at the same time, I still think there's a lot more to uncover. It's not going to shock me if there's multiple players involved in this potential NBA betting scandal. And you have to go back and you got to look at those numbers. And it was that Game 7 that started to raise some eyeballs. So we'll dissect that. We'll get into it. We'll take up to 6. Keep it locked in on a Friday.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting. A teenager. Learning the lingo.
Today I'm going to help parents translate teen slang. Now, when a teen says something is on fleek, it's exactly like saying, that's rad. It simply means that something is awesome or cool. Another one is totes. It's exactly like saying, totally, just shorter. As in, I totes love going to the mall with Becca. Another word you might hear is jelly. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will think you're, rad, just the same. To learn more, visit adoptuskids.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces, just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game.
Don't forget to get social with us. Follow Q at Rich Q on Q. And now, back to Q.
All right, 727-858-6650. That'll get you involved on a What the Frig football edition. I guess you can say What the Frig football edition of The Drive with Q because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of What the Frig going on right now. Is there not? I mean, in the NFL, as I mentioned, Newton's comments are absolutely just absurd. I feel as though when you don't win, you have to look around. You got to piss on other people's parades. And that's exactly what a guy like Newton's doing right now. I mean, come on, man. Get your MVP. Go take it. Go, dust it off from time to time. And remember that the quarterback you're pretty much being critical of, he'll be participating in his second Super Bowl in 3 years? I mean, that's all you really need to know, right? I mean, we're talking, would you rather have a Super Bowl or an MVP? I mean, give me a Super Bowl championship. Give me the chip. I can care less about an individual award, an MVP award. You ask Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley wants a ring. He doesn't care about a regular season award. That's great for your resume when it's in bold. But the first thing that stands out, when you win a Super Bowl or you win a championship in any major sport, you've got the clout. You carry that around. It's one of the reasons that you're doing commercials, you're doing speaking engagements, you're doing endorsements, you're doing testimonial deals. And I understand the human element, right? If you got scorned, if you didn't get your just due, if you feel overlooked, there's a new breed of quarterback coming into play. Guys that are going to surpass Cam Newton, what he was able to do statistically on the field. So sure, he's probably a little jealous. He's probably looking at Jalen Hurts and he's saying to himself, this guy's picking up easy touchdowns. It's not like he's really doing anything. He's that tush push. He's a yard out. He's 2 yards out. I was running 30 yards, 25 yards, 18 yards on 3rd and 16. I was picking up 20 and a touchdown. Hey, man, we get it. We get it. But again, man, your time has passed. You're no longer in the NFL. You're no longer in the NFL, so you can sit there and you can wax poetic about your career. You can talk about what you did on the field. You won an MVP. You had a great season in 2015. No one is taking that away from you. But other than that, you're not even going to sniff the Hall of Fame. You're not. You're not. You're not. And maybe that's where the jealousy is. Where you're looking around saying, oh, man, look at these guys. Oh, man, you know what? I was overlooked. He had Cam Newton had a nice career. He did. He had a nice career, and he was a tough quarterback to get down. He was a tough quarterback to wrap up. He made plays with his legs, right? He made sensational plays with his legs. But again, your time has passed, man. And there's a difference between having an opinion and just with the kukui and the goofiness. And to sit there and suggest that this team wouldn't be as good if they played in the AFC is ludicrous. They were one of the best teams arguably in the NFL all season long. They played like it, right? They played like it. 727-858-6650. Mario in Miami chimes in. Q, did you hear the comments of Ray Lewis? He's talking about the Miami Dolphins don't have a defined leader and they have zero identity. What say you? I did not see those comments, so I will take your word for it. Mario. Appreciate you tuning in. I mean, every team needs a leader, do they not? I'm not sure why. I don't know. Was his speaking engagement? Not sure why he's talking about the Miami Dolphins. But in any event, I think Tua is a leader. I think Tua is definitely a leader. But some people will look at him and say, hey, you know what? He's not. Trevor chimes in 727-858-6650. Scam Newton was a system quarterback. I don't know if he was a system quarterback, right? I mean, I thought Cam Newton was a good scrambling quarterback. I guess my point is you can't take away what some of these quarterbacks are doing now. Like, I get it. It's Super Bowl week. You're going to get some of the former players chiming in. Everyone's going to have an opinion, and you can either respect the opinion, you can take it on face value, you can take it for what it's worth. But some of it is just, it really makes no sense. Everyone's going to come up with their own narrative for this week. Everyone's going to come up with their own storylines. And I feel as though if Jalen Hurts, if the Philadelphia Eagles go out and win the Super Bowl, listen, there should be no more talk about Jalen Hurts being a franchise quarterback. There should be no more talk about Nick Sirianni being the head coach of this team for the foreseeable future. You win a Super Bowl, you have wiggle room. You have a longer leash. You have wiggle room. You have carte blanche. You really do. It's very rare you win a Super Bowl and then a year or two, you're fired later. It's rare. You know, you get to the Super Bowl and then if it doesn't pan out, maybe a year or two, you're dismissed. We've seen that before in the NFL, have we not? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. We've seen some head coaches who I think they were the benefit of having a really good team. I think they also benefited from being at the right place at the right time. And listen, this is like, for instance, this is no knock on a Brian Billick, right? Won a Super Bowl. Arguably, you had one of the greatest defenses in NFL history. But you know, I don't look at him and say he was a great head coach. I mean, they blew out the Giants in that Super Bowl 34-7. If Ron Dixon doesn't return the kickoff, that's your first shutout. That's your only shutout in NFL history in the Super Bowl, pardon me. But it ran its course. You know, 6-7 years later, it was mediocre football. That run ran its course. Now, is he deserving of being in the Ravens Ring of Honor? Sure, absolutely. Do I look at him and say he's a Hall of Fame head coach? No. But he also won a Super Bowl. His body of work, again, it ran out. Barry Switzer, Cowboys, that's another great example. The body of work, and we get rid of you. We get rid of you after a while. And we're seeing that trend with some of these coaches who have not even sniffed the Super Bowl. You know, listen, guys like McCarthy and Tomlin, they've been getting free passes for so long. For so long. Tomlin won his second year. McCarthy won early on with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. What have you done for me lately? Nothing. What have you done for me lately? Absolutely nothing. So you look at it from that standpoint, and, you know, at times, if you're not putting a good product on the field, say what you want about Sirianni, and I've been very critical of Nick Sirianni, whether you think he's a very good head coach, whether he just sits on the sideline and he's a glorified cheerleader, so be it. He wins. Sirianni's record, you know, you state the case with the record. You're winning 12, 13, 14 games a year. I mean, who's going to want to call for your head? Now, again, I think there's time and place for theatrics. I think we all agree there's a time and place for that. But at this stage, you look at Sirianni, and I think Eagles fans feel comfortable with him. All right, 5:24, quick timeout. We'll reset the table. Got some Facebook messages coming in. I want to get to them as well. 727-858-6650. Got to get into this gambling scandal. We'll do that second portion of the show. Keep it locked in on a What the Frig Football Friday edition of The Drive with Q. Rich Quinones here. Coming at you live inside the friendly confines of the Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game studios. We'll take up to about 6-ish on this Friday. Keep it locked in on a very late January.
Hey, Dad, your prescription will be ready in just a minute. Hey, Dad, your laundry will be ready in just a minute. Dad, your lunch will be ready in just a minute.
Hey, honey, why don't you take a minute?
When you help care for a loved one, you give them as much time as you can, making sure they're safe and comfortable. But it's just as important that you take some time for yourself. At AARP, we can help with information and useful tips on how you can maintain a healthy life balance, care for your own physical and mental well-being, and manage the challenges of caring for a loved one. Because the better care you take of yourself, the better care you can provide for your loved one.
Thanks, Dad.
Thank you.
You're there for them. We're here for you. Find free care guides to support you and your loved one at aarp.org/caregiving. That's aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
All right, class. Let's hear what everyone did this weekend. Jill?
Well, I raised my older sister to a big oak tree. It was at least 100 years old. My mom said I must have set a record or something. And then we went down by a stream and perched up on this huge rock and saw all of these little minnows swimming around way below us. And then I rescued my little brother from an evil slug king who was guarding him at the bush fortress. And my sister and I brought him back to our super twig fort for safety. And then we all laid out and told stories until it got dark. And the Big Dipper led us all the way home.
Wow. Awesome. Where were you, Jill?
Yeah. We went to the forest. It's not that far away. Anyone want to come this weekend?
Ask your parents to take you and your friends to the forest this week and find the fun, adventurous you. It's closer than you think. Check out discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Call or text the show at 727-858-6650. Now, back to Q.
All right, 27 past 5 o'clock hour on a Friday edition of The Drive with Q. We're powered by our good friends over at Zen Auto Concepts, #1 detailing shop in the state of Florida, of course, for this 31st of January 2025. We'll take you up to 6-ish. Angels out covering the Pro Bowl. We'll all be back in the saddle next week, Monday to Friday. Looks like we will be 5 to 6 going forward, and then we're going to make a couple of adjustments. If we can extend past the 6 o'clock hour a couple nights, we certainly will. We are doing a lot of back-end programming with the website. Also with more content, so it's extremely time consuming. So we are trying to make some adjustments, but we appreciate you guys keeping us locked in, and we'll be onboarding a couple new shows as well. So definitely follow us on social media, like us, favorite us, sub to the channel. Rich Q on Q, as well as Broad Street South, where you get the Coastal Sports Network content, SR 1029, and just follow along. You guys have been fantastic. Joe D. Summers Point chimes in. Q, do you really believe a Super Bowl win is going to be a reprimand on Jalen Hurts' career, or do you believe the story is already written? It seems like no one believes he is a franchise quarterback. Enjoying the show as always. Have a great Friday and weekend. Joe, appreciate you, pal. It's hard to say. I think we look at quarterbacks differently. I think we try to tag a dollar amount to the quarterback. See, this is what happens, right? So, for instance, there's a report out there, Sam Bradford, if he hits free agency, is probably going to be a $100 million quarterback. Now, people will say, well, what has he accomplished? Well, he had a really good year, and then they flamed out in the postseason, right? But you lose as a team. Unfortunately, the MO on Bradford is eventually he reverts back to seeing ghosts, not slinging Sammy Darnold. So people view Bradford as maybe a middle-of-the-pack bridge type of quarterback for some teams. All right, that may be the case. But if you attach a dollar amount, a value to Newton, and to Darnold in that regard, is he worth the type of money that I believe he's worth compared to, what you believe he's worth? And there's the rub. So with Jalen Hurts got a monster deal. And a lot of times you'll hear people say, are we paying you for what you did or what we believe you are going to do? So Jalen Hurts signed a monster contract. What was it? $255 million, right? Over 5 years. I mean, the signing bonus was ridiculous. The guaranteed money was ridiculous. But what we what we fail to forget is that he played himself to that level. He played himself to that level. And that's why the Eagles said, okay, we have a franchise quarterback right now. We have a franchise quarterback. He can't play golf, but we have a franchise quarterback. And if you look at the deal and you look at the dead cap and you look at the salary cap, he's going to play the life of this contract and he'll be in line for another one. If you win a Super Bowl, that $255 million that the Eagles are paying him, that the franchise is paying him over that span of 5 years, or now 3+, 4+, to them, I mean, it was a bargain. If he goes out and balls and he's Super Bowl MVP, are you kidding me? It's the right decision. It will be lauded. It will be applauded. This is why you pay the franchise quarterback. And it can also, flip side to that, New York Giants go on the road, win a playoff game. Daniel Jones plays lights out. They pay him big time money, $40 million guaranteed, $160, $40 million a year. Tears up his knee. They flame out. They bench him. He wants his release. They outright release him. Now he's a backup. Now he's a free agent. So, again, it's how you guys measure the value of the quarterback. To me, the quarterback's the most significant piece in all the sports. He's under center. He touches the ball the most. He's the face of the franchise. He should be the unspoken leader. Right? And we tag wins and losses to what position? The quarterback position. We don't do it to a linebacker or a wide receiver, a running back, or defensive end, or a tackle, or a lineman, or a corner, or a DB. Deion Sanders, Hall of Fame, shut down corner, right? Lockdown corner. Darrelle Revis, locked down. Oh, look at their win-loss record. We don't do that. We look at their accolades. We look at who they were shutting down, the best receivers. We look at all their stats, their interceptions. Did they win All-Pro, All-Defensive MVP? Were they All-Pros, Defensive Player of the Years? Did they win Super Bowls? We're not tagging wins and losses to them. We do that with the quarterback position. So to answer your question, Joe, I don't think it's going to be, when I say referendum, I think that Monday after the Super Bowl, there will be either, hey, Jalen Hurts was worth it, and you see the kid can win, or, well, might have been a mistake paying him. There's really not going to be an in-between. There really isn't, because someone will nitpick if he's 20 of 28 for 280 and 3 touchdowns. They'll figure out something with the 8 misses, because that's what we do. That's what we do. Tom in Summers Point chimes in, Q, I can't believe you're actually giving Sirianni a little credit. I know he's not a, quote, glorified cheerleader, as you often say he is on the air, but I can actually appreciate you giving him some credit. Thank you. I'm not really giving him credit. I'm saying that he's got wiggle room. If you can win 12, 13, 14 games a season, and you're taking your team deep into the playoffs, you're winning divisional titles, you're going to the Super Bowl again early in your career, and you do it 2 times in 3-4 years, you have a margin of error. There is wiggle room. Like, we're not going to sit there and say, get rid of this guy. And you can't say that. Listen, I was leading that charge last year. If you guys remember, I was leading that charge. Get rid of him. Get rid of him. Make a change. It's time. Make a change. It's totally different now. You get back to the Super Bowl, and again, you have an opportunity to win it. Only concern with Hurts not turning the ball over in my prop bets, which you will get next week. Which you will get. And yeah, the turnovers, obviously, you can't turn the ball over against Kansas City and give them a short field. You can't do that. You really can't. Sal in the DMV chimes in, Q, I'm actually heartbroken over this Tucker nonsense. If these allegations are true, the Ravens need to release him outright, and he should never even step in the Hall of Fame. I think a lot more details. I know Sally's a big-time Ravens fan. I know a lot more details have to come out, but we've seen worse in the Hall of Fame, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. But yeah, it's not good stuff, man. It really isn't. And I don't even want to say unfortunate, because you have to be held accountable for your actions. And if you're accused of inappropriate sexual behavior and you have a track record of this, then you got to start looking in the mirror, and you can't be pointing fingers and say it's you guys. No, it's me. And if Justin Tucker, who's been accused of inappropriate sexual behavior by 6 massage therapists, if these reports are valid and the evidence is overwhelming, then yeah, the NFL not only has to step in, but I'm sure, listen, there's moral clauses in contracts. We all know that. But you can't allow for that kind of conduct. And you're talking about a potentially, allegations that consistently repeated themselves for 4 years. So 2012 and 2016, those were his first 5 seasons in the NFL. And there was another report that came out. And again, let me pull it up. So this is, here you go. This is from the Post. One NFL reporter says he was tipped off about Ravens kicker Justin Tucker's alleged creepy behavior before the Baltimore Banner revealed its investigation accusing him of inappropriate sexual behavior by 6 female massage therapists between 2012 2016. Benjamin Albright, if you follow on social, Denver Broncos insider. Some people don't like him, but okay. For KOA Colorado, posted a screenshot of alleged direct messages from an unnamed sender who told him to look into Tucker and massage parlors. Tucker obviously denied it, but Albright wrote, got tipped off to this earlier this week and was looking into it. It looks like a lot of information here corroborate what I came up with. So what the source said was, you might want to check around with Baltimore sources about some sort of article coming out about Justin Tucker and massage parlors. Nothing criminal as far as I know, just more of the creepy side and him being removed from those type of establishments a few times. Not good. It's not a good look. It's really not a good look. And the NFL is going to have to do their due diligence. The Ravens are going to have to investigate this. The NFL is going to have to investigate. The authorities are going to have to investigate this. And if we learned anything, where there's smoke, there's fire. If we learned anything with the Deshaun Watson, where there's smoke, there's a hell of a lot of fire. I mean, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. 727-858-6650. Let me get to a couple more comments. Maddie in Delaware chimes in. Q, looking forward to your betting thoughts next week. I'm sure you're going to hold it to a Football Friday. Also, your player prop seems everyone wants to get in on the hot action. Ha, ha, ha. But what do you think about this story in the NBA, Terry Rozier? That's got to be a bombshell, yes? Yep. Listen, that Rozier story, and I wanted to touch base on that a little bit. That is a huge bombshell of a story. That is a ticking time bomb right now. The last thing the NBA needs, the last thing the NBA wants, the last thing the sports world needs is a betting scandal. And I already start to look at some of his stat lines, some of his box scores, and it's not. Terry Rozier is a $100 million player. So the first thing that comes to mind if this is true, what's the benefit? What are you trying to gain here? That's number one. Did you fall into place with the wrong people? Do you have an addiction? Do you have a problem? So if you guys are just new to the story or just tuning in right now, Rozier plays with the Heat. He's being investigated by the feds who are looking into whether he manipulated his performance as part of a broader sports betting scheme. So when we say manipulated your performance, basically throwing games. Or giving out pertinent information that would give a gambler a competitive advantage. Again, without getting into nitty gritty, if the feds have suspicions that Rozier tried to pull off the same thing that Jonte Parker tried to pull off, then now you're talking about a co-conspirators, and apparently the allegations involve the same group. But the game in question happened in 2023, not 2024. Now, the NBA is in bed with sports betting because the commissioner is very outside the box thinking, Adam Silver. He's very, David Stern, God rest his soul, never, ever. When Michael Jordan, a lot of reports were coming out that Michael Jordan obviously was a big time gambler. A big time gambler. And if you go back many years ago, David Stern was trying to protect the NBA. You're talking about two of the most influential figures the league has ever seen. Ever seen. And you have to go really back to talk about the betting scandal. Because people believe that David Stern pushed Jordan, wink, wink, you owe people some money, there might be some people after you, here we go, wink, wink, retire. Push, we pushed your agenda, wink, wink, step aside, all right, you're going to play baseball, whatever. And then, there were these very erroneous reports coming out that Michael Jordan's father was murdered because of Jordan's gambling debt. That was debunked big time. And, we're not even going to get into that. And listen, Jordan was just stupid while he was gambling. I mean, he admitted it. But people believe that Jordan was forced to retire because David Stern did not want to deal, did not want the light shed on the NBA and the gambling problem. So here you go. Or did he legitimately want to play baseball? I mean, we can have that conversation down the road. But point being is, you don't want a scandal of this magnitude or of that again. I mean, the NBA, we know about the ratings. We know the ratings are down. We know that the quality of play is not there. We know if you poll 10 people on the street, 1 or 2 might actually be able to give you 3 or 4 players. We know that. I watch the NBA. I'm a hoops guy. You guys know that. Sometimes you guys don't like that I talk hoops on the show. Oh, well, deal with it. But point is this. If this is a, 2-alarm blaze and you got co-conspirators and there's more smoke, now all of a sudden it's turned into a 5-6 alarm. We might get to a 10-alarm fire here, because if you're manipulating your stats to get to certain benchmarks to satisfy the betting lines, that's not good. And that really disrupts the integrity of the game. Now, what's more interesting is someone sent this to me. Someone sent me this screenshot. They DM'd me this. And they said, Q, talk about this on your show. And it was from someone on X said, are we sure we don't want to investigate Rozier for Game 7 in the Eastern Conference Finals? So that's a series they lost. The Celtics, when he was at the Celtics, they lost in 7 to the Cleveland Cavaliers, 87-79, that Game 7. In 36 minutes, he was 2 of 14. He had 4 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, but he was also 0 for 10 from beyond the arc. And I remember that game vividly. I went back and I watched some of the highlights on it. And I'm probably going to watch it in its entirety again because some of his shot selection was horrible. Now, the one question, as Nick and Wallingford, Matt in Delaware are kind of commenting in real time, asking, why would you do that, Q, if he was making that type of money? Correct. His current contract guarantees him nearly $100 million. He's made nearly $134 million in career earnings. You don't need the money. So a scandal to him, he doesn't care, right? But if it's true that he was part of this or in cahoots or manipulated the line to satisfy, player props, the betting line, the gamblers, that's a huge blow. That's a huge blow for the NBA. That's a huge blow for the sports betting industry too. And that's why, we always talk about, they talk RG, responsible gaming, but how about the integrity of just some of these apps that want to pull the bets or not give you fair value? So now all of a sudden you got him and maybe he's telling a couple of his buddies, yeah, you know what, play the under today and try to cash in, go heavy. If you have that kind of money and you're betting solely on the outcome of the game, if the line moves substantially, then that's a different animal. That is a big time different animal. And you also have to say to yourself, what's the benefit of doing this? What's the benefit? What am I to gain? If that Eagles Super Bowl line, Eagles in Kansas City, we're sitting at 1.5, and all of a sudden Patrick Mahomes decides to put $10 million on Kansas City, guess what? That line's shooting up exponentially. You know, when a millions of dollars or millions and millions of dollars is changing hand, the line's going to move. So you know someone had to have a substantial amount of money to do it. If it's for $5,000, $10,000, a nickel dime here and there, I don't know what the benefit is. I really don't. But it's a bad look. I mean, now you go back and we start to get into the whole Tim Donaghy issue. And I feel as though something like this will not shock me. You know, I believe there will be a prominent player in the NFL, and it could be within 2 to 3 years, a prominent player is going to get pinched for gambling. I just feel as though we're going down that path. They're so enticed. It's so appealing. And I'm not trying to talk out of both sides of my mouth saying, well, what's the benefit of doing it? I just think some of these guys, man, they got so much money that they get bored at times. They really do. Like, it's not going to shock me. It's not. You can't put anything past me when it comes to this kind of stuff. And that's where we're at right now, especially in the NBA. All right, about 15 to play with last time out. I'll get to some more of your Facebook comments. Keep it locked in. We'll take you up to 6-ish on a Friday edition of The Drive with Q right here on SR 102.9 FM. The Game, Southwest Florida's newest game in town.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
The following is made possible by Dad.
Why was the basketball court all wet? Because the players kept dribbling all over it.
The dad joke. Corny, grown-worthy, but also one of the simplest ways to share a moment with your kids.
Why do you have to be careful when it's raining cats and dogs? Because you might step in a poodle.
And kids that spend more time with their dads grow up to be smarter, more successful.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
And, with any luck, funnier adults.
Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he didn't have anybody to go with.
Dad jokes rule. So take a moment to make a moment and give your kid a laugh. It's as easy as going to fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
That's really funny.
Download the Sports Radio 102.9 FM The Game app and tell your friends that Florida has a new leader in digital sports radio.
727-858-6650. That'll get you involved. And like I said, it's going to shock me. You know, it will not shock me at all if a very prominent NBA player, much bigger than Rozier or NFL star, gets caught up in gambling. You have to wonder, though, what the benefit is for a guy like Rozier who's already made millions. It just doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. 727-858-6650. See what you guys have to say out there. Fight Game chimes in. Appreciate that for chiming in. The only way Cam can stay relevant is to say the dumbest shit imaginable. And his weird hats can ride off into the distance. Yeah, it's a good comment, by the way. It makes no sense. It absolutely makes no sense. Appreciate you chiming in, too. Commenting for the first time, and welcome aboard the show. It makes no sense. I feel as though we we want to take shots at these guys, right? If you didn't have that level of success, Cam Newton had an opportunity to win a Super Bowl. Like I said, there was a fumble. He decided, I'm not going to jump on it. And they were not competitive in that game. Now, I'm not going to take away from his 15-1 MVP season in 2015. I remember that game against the Giants. That was the Josh Norman, Odell Beckham game. They were going back and forth. Giants were down 28, tied it up. And then I think there was a 3rd and 16, and Newton basically ran for 18 yards. At that moment, I said, this guy pretty much solidified himself as the league MVP. And that was pretty much the height of his career. It really was. And it's easy to take a step back now and look at some of these teams and look at some of these quarterbacks and look at some of these players. And there's a sense of jealousy. They do not want to give them their just due. They don't like the fact that they're making so much money, but that's the nature of the sport. That's the nature of the position. It really is. If Jalen Hurts goes out and wins a Super Bowl, Eagles win and Jalen Hurts wins the MVP, that $255 million contract is going to look like a bargain. It is. It is flat out going to look like a bargain. You don't think Minnesota, think about this. How much is too much, right? How much is the ask for Sam Darnold? Which teams are going to make the most sense? Because I told you, if they would have beaten Detroit and you get home field advantage, he probably paid himself into $150. People are projecting he's going to make $120 over 3 years. Now, I said he's a $30 million, and you guys were killing me. Now you're saying $120 over 3 years. That's a $40 million contract. How much is too much? Is Darnold worth that? Imagine if they would have made a deep run in the playoffs. So if you're a team out there and you're a quarterback needy team, are you willing to give him 3 years at $120 based on what he did? Or is it to Baker Mayfield? I need to see you do it again. Because Mayfield had the big season and then he got rewarded and he doubled up. He had an even bigger season, hence the 3 years, $100 million that Tampa Bay got. Tampa Bay dished out to Baker last year. So if you're talking about adjusted upward based on inflation, market demand, well then statistically, Darnold had a better season than Mayfield's 2023. And now the issue is there's so much of a higher demand for the quarterbacking position. The vacancy, the spots that are open with some of these teams is ridiculous. Demand this year due to a lack of obvious options in free agency, and no one sold on these guys coming out. I'm sorry. You guys can break my balls all you want about Shedeur Sanders going to the Giants or can't. I'm not enamored with any of these quarterbacks. Now we're hearing the kid Dart is going up the boards, right? All of a sudden he's making his move. He's going up the board. So, does that mean he's a top 5, top 10? I don't know. But are you going to pay Darnold for what he did this past season? Or are you going to pay Sam Darnold for what you believe he can do over the next 2, 3, 4 seasons? Right? That's, like I said, man, it is such a crapshoot. You have to be so careful when you are getting ready to pay these guys. Jobs are on the line. GM's jobs are on the line. Head coaching jobs, player jobs, right? It's a trickle-down effect. If the quarterback plays poorly, your numbers aren't going to be as good. Or maybe too much of a strain on the defense. Maybe you're not going to be as productive. Incentives, they come into play. Everything comes into play. So, I know that Marcus in Delaware listening on the app is chiming in. This is actually a very valid point. Q, when we measure the quarterbacks, as you said, what am I paying you really for? To play 17, make a deep playoff run? Or am I looking at statistics? Am I looking at what I believe you're going to do? If that's the case, I would be very cautious with a quarterback like Sam Darnold, i.e., look what happened to your Giants. Always enjoying the show. Appreciate that, Marcus. It's an excellent point. And Monday, Marcus never chimes in on a Friday, but we appreciate it nonetheless. It's an excellent point. You got to be careful, man. The Giants, they overpaid Daniel Jones. They overevaluated Daniel Jones. It was a reach of a pick at 6, right? We all know that. And it blew up in their face. And we thought it was going to cost the GM and the head coach their job. And obviously that money was not well spent. And I'm not going to get into, you could have paid Saquon. The Giants were just not going to bring back Saquon. That's not the conversation. Conversation when it comes to the quarterback and play. Oh, chimes in. And Winona. Appreciate that. Oh, Q, you're talking about all this betting scandal. I remember years ago you had Donaghy on for that spot. You guys went back and forth. It was a pretty heated segment. Wonder if you can find that and play some of the clips on the air one day. That would be awesome to hear as a little retrospect. Second part of my question is this. You're right. What is the benefit of your Terry Rozier? Maybe one of his boys, maybe part of his entourage got in trouble and they owed a lot of people money. We don't know, man. That's all speculation. And the Donaghy clip, I would love to maybe play some of that down the road. I got a lot of those clips out there. I would love to find them and start implementing into the show. But you just don't know the reasoning. I mean, first, let the feds do their investigation, the NBA do their investigation. Let's see what their findings are. And you're right, maybe. I mean, think about this. Ohtani, you're talking about arguably one of the greatest players of this generation. Are you going to tell me, am I supposed to believe that Ohtani didn't know that his translator was taking money out of his account to cover gambling debts? I don't buy that at all. I don't buy that at all. Come on, man. You guys are in relationships, right? Or you're married, or you got a girlfriend, boyfriend. You know, you're sitting there saying, well, who took $250, $300 out of the account? You're going to notice that. Imagine someone taking $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. You're not going to notice that? Even if you're making $200 million? Come on. That's a big time accounting error. So to O's point, who knows? I mean, Rozier could have been a couple friends, could have been family. We don't know. It's all speculation, but this is not what the NBA needs. They don't. They just don't. It's the problem now is that detractors are basically going to say, see, this is why sports and sports leagues, i.e. NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL, should not get in bed with the betting industry. Because they're going to say, here you go, temptation from temptation. We don't, rules be damned, chaos be damned, regulations be damned, doesn't matter. Now the integrity of these games are always going to be in jeopardy. We're talking about it. We talked about it for 3 weeks with Kansas City and the flags and no flags. So on one hand, regulators are doing what they're supposed to do. One player has already been caught. Here we go. Potential another player is being investigated. Nothing to see here. Nothing more might come out. But again, if that's the case, one can argue that the fact that we need to bring in a system for all of this in the first place to make sense, to have all our ducks in a row, like this really has to be monitored, like under a microscope. And I'm not going to make any sweeping judgments because there's an ongoing investigation. But you don't, for 1 minute, we know the sports world's looking at this and they're waiting to see what the hell's going to happen and how it's going to come down. All right, good stuff. Got a lot more comments. Was not able to get to all of them, but I appreciate it. Don't forget, we got a BYP. Speaking of the sports betting, we'll drop that this weekend. Back your play. Tomorrow night, a very good card, Prudential Center. I'll be ringside calling it for Boxing TV, The Next Generation, so you can check it out online, bxngtv.tv, and pay-per-view. Had a good card last night in Sioux Falls. A couple real nice prospects. And that was a pretty interesting card, too. There was, what was it, 8 last night. Very good promotion, 15th round promotions. They have some really young prospects. I'll tell you a name to watch out for because we don't really put a lot of love in Midwest boxing. But there's a good-looking welterweight, 24 years of age, Deontay Walker. We saw it coming last night after the first round. It was an 8-round affair against Eduardo Reis, and he was just working the body. Floored him a couple times in the first, got him out of there in the second, won the UBO International Welterweight strap. He's probably going to get a higher ranking, but that's a name. If we get sometimes we get some people from the Midwest that are tuning in. We get some people from Ohio that are tuning in a lot. So that's a name to watch. And then tomorrow, it is a all Polish card, I believe. I think 90% of the fighters tomorrow night are all of Polish descent. So I will have a lot of fun trying to pronounce some of those names, but that'll be in the Prudential Center. And I believe first bell is at 7 o'clock. So, all right, got to start wrapping up. Next week, full slate of shows. We'll be on the air Monday to Friday, 5 to 6. We'll go a little extra on that Friday. We'll do a big-time Super Bowl preview. Kansas City, the Eagles. I will give you my player props. Yes, I will. Don't forget, we'll drop 2 editions of BYP Back Your Play, our sports betting pod. You can get that wherever you get your podcast, Amazon Music, Spotify, Buzzsprout, Podchaser, wherever you guys get your podcasts, Apple, iTunes, you can definitely download that. Angel will be back in the saddle on Monday. Pete Shepard, Monday to Friday, 7 to 10. Martinez and Company, 10 to 12. Middays with Q, 5 to 6 next week. We are adding more programming. As always, we want you guys to keep it locked in to Sports Radio 102.9 FM, The Game. As always, have a good Sports Friday. Enjoy the weekend of college hoops, NBA, and then we get through another week and the Super Bowl will be upon us. I just cannot stand these friggin' lulls, but it is what it is. So we go NFL heavy over the weekend. We'll mix in a little boxing, a little NBA, Jonathan Marshall, Lloyd Vance, Costco is going to join us, Steve Gardner on baseball, the Pete Alonso watch with the Mets will continue as well. And that's all next week. Give me a follow on social media at RichQ on X, on Facebook, on IG, and of course the YouTube channel, Rich Q on Q. With that being said, have a wonderful Sports Friday. Have a very good weekend. Be safe, be sound. We will be back in the saddle on Monday at 5. As always, I'm Rich Quinones. Hasta luego, buen día.